The reason I love doing panels is because it's a chance to workshop material, and it's often you see what comes out of your mouth, and then you see how the audience reacts to it, and then you think, oh, this is something I should say next time, because my goal, you have done this so well because you're talking so much, you've got the show, you're on stage a lot. It's very clear that you have compartmentalized thoughts into cohesive little delivery nuggets, you know?
Right.
And I'm working to do that now, because until this job, nobody had ever asked it of me. And now I'm in a place where people are often asking it of me. And I find that it's really valuable to have a menu of thoughts that you know exactly how to express and that you know connect with people. And so I'm always looking to build that menu, it feels like awkwardly strategic to connect by process.
Yeah.
But that's what I'm trying to do. So I was
panels are easier though, because you get more time to formulate your thoughts. Like a one-on-one interview, you get the question, you got to start talking, and then sometimes start talking and then steer it into the right answer.
Yeah.
But panels, like, I get 2 minutes to come up with the cleverest shit that I can come up with.
Totally. But what's great about panels is that you also you're not expected to be polished in a way that you are when it's just you. So when I'm going on stage, I have outlined the thing that I'm going to do, and the chances of me riffing and coming up with something that's brand new that the audience is going to react to, and I'm going to be like, oh shit, I should add that to the things I do next time, is low, because I'm being more controlled. I feel like there's more pressure on me to be a perfect package. Whereas when you're on a panel, you can just riff, and random things will come at you, and random questions will come at you. And I find that a panel is the place where I end up saying things that I didn't think to say before, that just kind of came up at the top of the head.
Sure.
And so that feels like it's a great workshop. It's a great workshop for speaking. So I will often think through what I said on a panel and think, did the audience like that? What worked really well? Oh, that was really good. Can I build another minute around it and create the menu? I have this theory of public speaking. It's called the theory of interlocking parts. And it is that what you need to do is build this menu of interlocking parts in your head, of like 5-minute interlocking parts. And then once you have a large enough menu, you can go and speak on stage to any crowd without any preparation, because you can just pull the interlocking parts down as needed.
Yep.
And as someone who's just getting into the speaking game, my menu is small. And so I'm very conscious of building the menu.
It's funny to me when I'm watching like the Miss United States. My fiance was a former pageant winner, national pageant winner. Yeah. But I'll watch that and I'll be like, man, it's so easy, and they freak out so hard. You know, like, you got to just think about things. You got to be constantly, but I guess for them, their life isn't like our life, which is podcasting, talking about ideas, having interesting conversations about different topics, formulating your philosophy about, you know, everything that's already out there.
Yeah.
So, you know, I think it's a helpful process to just have conversations and have these podcasts. And you got 2 podcasts and all these even offline conversations where you're just having coffee with somebody and exploring different topics. I think people would do themselves a favor if they pushed out of the bounds of what they normally talk about. Like, I like having dinner parties where I'll propose a question, like Jeffersonian style, like propose a question to the table, you know, like I proposed a question, you know, recently, and, you know, I have my own spiritual understanding of things, but I said, all right, everyone, what makes God laugh? And that's a very loaded question, because you have your definition of God, and then you have like, so it was very insightful to me, like whether they believed in a God, whether they didn't believe in a God, and how they viewed the world, and just like watching everybody's response to that question was dope. Because then you like,
did you come up with that question on the fly?
Yeah, I came up with that question. Well, I came up with that question earlier, and I was thinking about it, and I was pondering it. It was like my own Zen koan of like, and then I finally actually asked it to Whitney, and she came up with, I thought was like the perfect answer.
What was her answer?
Well, I won't tell you. I got to ask you now first. what makes God laugh?
Oh, that's such a tough one for me to break apart, because one, I'm not religious at all. So
right.
Nor am I. Yeah. I mean, I'm Jewish by tribe, but not by any faith.
Right.
And so I spend zero time thinking about what God is or might be to other people. I also think that what it was such a tough question, because what would make somebody laugh? Like, what kind of sense of humor would God have? There's a couple different ways you could go with it, right? One is that we are some kind of amusement for God, and therefore
that's almost laughing at, right?
Yeah,
right. That projects this differentiation, laughing at.
Yeah. Well, so if God is, I mean, maybe I'm just taking the question too literally, but if God is omnipresent, all-knowing, then nothing is going to surprise God, and therefore, what often makes us laugh is that we are surprised in a delighted way.
Sure.
And so if he cannot be, or she or whatever, it cannot be surprised in that way, then I feel like God would only laugh if God was an actor, if God had created something simply for God's own amusement. It's the only thing that would make somebody laugh if they already know everything. Because the only thing that God doesn't know is perhaps what God would do next.
Right.
And so God can delight God. I'm like, at this point I've tried to not use pronouns, but God would delight God by doing something new, because that would literally be the only thing that would be new.
So there is nothing new. So I think it really becomes ultimately a choice of how you look at the world. God either laughs at nothing because everything is really serious, or God laughs at everything because everything, in the span of time, everything was just imagining the whole world, all of infinity bursting out in a single moment, and all the crazy things we do, people laughing at their farts and struggle and triumph and jokes and love and all of this. And I could just imagine, and this was Whitney's answer. She's thought about it for a second, goes, well, everything. Because in that moment, as the universe infinitely expands, is like, oh, wow. That was a good one,
Look at this thing.
Look at this thing. Wasn't that amazing?
This thing just keeps going. Holy crap.
And it's just I think the way you're thinking about it is exactly right. Like, you're either an everything or a nothing person, or the question just fucks you up because you have no concept of, you can't fathom that concept of God.
No, I like that answer also because I have laughed many times at that something worked. Like that I did something and it worked, and that is on its own funny because oh my God, this is happening. The last time that happened, I just wrote about this for an upcoming issue of the magazine. So I've been thinking about how to self-promote better, because I've always been very apologetic about self-promotion. I feel like it's almost like a burden. Like, now you have to listen to this other thing that I make. When I created a new podcast, I sent it out to all my friends, and the subject line was, "In case you're not sick of my voice." Right? It's like I'm trying to be sort of apologetic about it. But I watch entrepreneurs, and they're all very thoughtful about how they promote, but very importantly, they always frame it as, this thing is useful to you. Yeah. It's not useful to me. The self-promotion isn't useful to me. It's useful to you, because you should know and benefit from this thing that I made. And so I thought, can I do that? What would be the framework by which I do that? And I thought, oh, well, this is a good solution to this problem that I have, which is, what do I do with the bazillion people who are connecting with me on LinkedIn who I don't know? Because I didn't know what to do with these people. They're all connecting with me. I was like, do I add them to my network? And then I've diluted my network. Does it matter? Who cares about LinkedIn? Anyway, so I decided, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to write this message, and it's going to say, hello, thank you for connecting with me on LinkedIn. I assume you are already familiar with Entrepreneur Magazine, so let me tell you about some of the other resources that I've created for you. And then I tell them about my podcasts and newsletter. And I wrote this thing out. It's like 200 words. And then I approved hundreds of people at the same time. And I just sent them all this message. And you know what they did? They wrote back and they were like, thank you so much. Oh, this is so interesting. Oh, I subscribed right now. And I laughed out loud. I mean, every time it happened, I laughed out loud because it worked. Yeah. It worked exactly as I wanted it to. And that is funny.
Yeah. I'm with that. I'm with that 100%. When you're thinking about like that act, you really got to believe that you have something of value. And I think that's what separates the good entrepreneurs from the ones that are just kind of flash in the pan, or the ones that you just get that kind of feeling like, ooh, like a ghost just walked in the room. Like there's something a little off with the energy. And the good ones, they believe that what they're providing is of value. Yeah. So the reciprocity exchange is even. You know, like I'm giving you goods, services, information that are actually of service to you. So if you give me your money, attention, time, that the equation is going to equal out. And if anything, the the better entrepreneurs are going to try and deposit even more into that bank. Say, my goods, services, message is going to be even better than what I'm receiving from you in return, and maintaining that positive balance. And then if they need to make a withdrawal, then and really have an ask like, hey, I'd really love it if you guys could support me in this, campaign or whatever.
Yeah.
And go for that. You got a deposit that you can withdraw upon.
That's right. Yeah, it's like it's Gary V's jab, 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 punch, or whatever his
right.
framework is.
So that's a way more violent thing. It feels like you're just getting pummeled.
I don't know why did you use that metaphor?
Yeah.
It's such a strange thing.
If more Behrman like kiss hand job would have been like a better way to do it, I
think. But also the thing is, there is a understanding of the person that you're reaching out to, which is really useful, right? Like it's so clear that they understand how to connect with the customer and what the customer's looking for. Like, when you're pitching out, you can either pitch it out in a way in which it seems like you do not understand who you're reaching out to, or in which you understand exactly the needs of the person that you're reaching out to.
Well, if you reach out to someone you don't know what they need and you're just blabbing in their ear, you're making a withdrawal on their time and attention and providing no value.
That's right.
Right? So you're already creating a negative balance. And those are like, one of my marketing consultant friends, George Bryan, he calls those creating body bags. It's like you've created a negative deficit that you're going to have to overcome by ear beating someone with your idea that they're not interested in.
Yeah.
So really crafting that and finding your market and message is important.
Right. And you're also then just burning your own time.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? I mean,
You're
the
just
number of
wasting your
people,
time.
my inbox is full of people wasting their own damn time reaching out to me. You shouldn't, there's so many people who shouldn't reach out to me.
Yeah.
Because you're pitching your product or your company or whatever, and you're pitching it to the wrong person and you're pitching it in the wrong way. And so you've wasted a tiny amount of my time, the amount of time that it takes me to open the email, identify that it is not for me, and then delete it, which is not that much time. It took you a lot longer to find me, find my email address, write that thing out. I'll give you a perfect example. I recently got an email from this guy who created a bottle cap opener. So, okay, imagine it. It's like so.
Whoa!
I know.
Bottle cap opener. You're blowing my mind here, Jason.
So the problem is that nobody can open bottles.
Oh wow! Have you ever found yourself with a bottle?
Hundreds of years of bottles, and nobody knows how to get inside of them.
There's delicious liquid everywhere in this world, and no way to access it.
It's so strange that all these companies have been putting it inside of a tool that nobody can open. Why would you do that? So there's a bottle cap. So imagine a bottle cap opener, except imagine it as a kind of longer platform, maybe 8 inches of platform with on one end the metal.
Isn't that like the bar key that every bar back?
Yeah, it is kind of like that. Actually, it's totally. So you would put it, you'd angle it on there. You'd sort of affix it to the bottle cap, and then you would slam your fist down on the platform, and the cap would go flying 20 feet in the air. Okay, that's the product. Now, who does this appeal to? Frat boys? I don't know. I don't know who it appeals to. It appeals to somebody, presumably. He had launched a Kickstarter for this product, and he was looking for people to know about it and therefore contribute to the Kickstarter. And he reached out to me. Now, this is
like you were going to be editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur. Damn, that's a good idea. I got a spot on the cover for you, Doc.
Right. We were going to run Tim Ferriss on the cover. Get Tim off.
Tim,
we're just putting the bottle cap. So
the bottle cap ejaculator is the new hot thing. We're calling it early.
Yeah, it's like the projectile vomiter of bottle cap openers. So. Okay, so let's diagnose the problem here, and let's accept that this has an audience. That somebody wants this bottle cap opener. That there are 19-year-old dudes out there.
We might have just sold a bunch of them.
We probably just did. It's too bad I don't remember the name of the product.
So actually, this whole story is actually going to be ironic because it's fucking paying off for him right now. He's the one laughing at us right now.
We just devoted 4 minutes of the story to this thing. They're completely defeating the purpose of my story. But so let's imagine we didn't have this conversation and it just ended in my inbox.
Yeah.
So he has reached out to the editor of a magazine for creators, right? When somebody's coming to the magazine, they're not thinking of themselves as consumers. They're thinking of themselves as creators. And therefore, they're not really in a buying mindset. And also, they're not his right demo because our demo is older than, I mean, we actually do have some teenage readers, which is awesome to hear from, but mostly they're older. And so he has found the wrong guy in every possible way. It's not his demo. It's not the kind of reader who would convert into the kind of person that he wants. So had he spent time thinking, here's what I need. What I need is press that will move dollars to my Kickstarter.
Yep.
Then he should have identified the press outlets that reach that consumer and then reached out to them. Total frat move would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Entrepreneur.
Chive, maybe you could have
Chive.
You could have licensed it to the Chive for something
totally,
like that.
Because the Chive does really big. They have a really big merchandising.
Yeah, they could have girls
business.
with boobs that were slamming things down, and
oh
bottle
my
caps
God.
were flying out in the
run
air.
it in
and
slow mo.
Yeah, exactly.
If anyone from the Chive is listening, we just made some money.
Yeah.
So, but entrepreneur is just not the place, right?
Right.
So by not understanding his audience, he wasted his own time more than he wasted my time.
It was interesting when we were talking too about, so many people want to be entrepreneurs and so many people want to start a business.
Yeah.
And you were mentioning what the most trafficked article ever for your magazine and your online was. And so tell us what the title of that article was.
Right. So for years running now, I might have the number wrong, but for years running now, the most trafficked article is need a business idea? Here are 52. and the piece is, they're not detailed. It's like number 7, auto mechanic, number 8, bottle cap manufacturer, whatever it is. It's really simple, but I find that, okay, there's like a couple things to say about this. Number one is that every industry has these things that disappoint the people who work in the industry. Right? Like I have a friend who works at Macy's in the buying department, and she was complaining to me recently about how everybody in that department is really bummed out that the best selling plates are these ugly ass yellow plates with butterflies on them, right? Because people, when you work at a job, you want to be innovative and you want to be finding new things and you want to be kind of high-minded, and you're constantly reminded that that's not always what the consumer wants. Right. Sometimes the consumer wants this thing that disappoints your creative sensibility.
And that's also a good entrepreneur can recognize and just listen.
Yes.
You're like, all right, well, the people have spoken.
That's right.
And my ideas about what it should be or how it should be are not more important than what people actually want.
Totally. That it reminds me of, so my friend Kevin runs one of those paint and sip. You know what a paint and sip is?
No.
So you show up it's a studio, and you show up and you get a painting class, and you bring your own wine or beer or something. There's tons of them. There's a bunch of franchises called like Pinot's Palette. They're all these cheeky names. Kevin runs one called Painting Lounge in New York. And at first, he's a painter. He's an amazing painter. And at first, he thought he would teach people how to paint the classics. People would want to come in, they want to learn how to do Picasso, or whatever.
Nah, nudes, dog.
No, not even. They just want
what?
Landscapes.
Landscapes.
Landscapes. That's what they want. They want like cheesy landscapes, and they want buildings and whatever. Why do they want that? I don't know. He was initially disappointed by it, but you know what? You gotta appreciate what your audience wants and roll with it. And so he changed his entire business towards that, and it took off after that.
Yeah.
It's like you have to, sometimes you can be, I think you can be like too high-minded or too complex for your own audience, and you have to meet them where they want you to be.
It's a balance of providing exactly what they want and maybe steering the future of what is possible. It's that kind of visionary versus just being of service to what is now to being of service of what will be, and kind of moving the industry forward. Like Apple rides that line really hard. Like when they took out the headphone jack out of their recent phones, like that's a fucking aggressive move.
Really aggressive.
Like really aggressive move. It's not what people were asking for. People were like, that damn annoying headphone jack. Right, I hate being able to charge my phone and listen to music at the same time. That's a problem.
Yeah.
But they're like really just driving, the market towards simplicity. And
But
I don't know which side of that.
People they were addressing a problem though, which is that people hated having the wire connected from their head to their phone.
Yeah.
I hated it. It was getting caught on doorknobs. It was like yanking out every time I would
that's not the
leave
problem
my
with the
apartment.
hole. Like now you go to an Uber, and if you don't have a dongle, you got to listen to whatever fucking crazy world music that they're playing, or they're classical or whatever, and you're not into it. Fortunately now I have a little man purse, so I carry my dongle always in my man purse. But it's like requiring like an extra set of tech.
You didn't just get Bluetooth headphones?
No, but
earbuds?
I do have that, but I'm talking like in an Uber.
Yeah.
When you have the aux cord, go into the Uber and you're trying to play music, like situations like that. If they just had that little hole there, the hole wouldn't bother me.
Right.
I'd still rock my
That's
Bluetooth,
true. Yeah.
but the hole was available. But they're like aggressive.
Right.
And I think there's some wisdom to that. It's that balance of like serving the current market,
Yeah.
but then also driving it forward a little bit. And they can go too far. They can go, and I think, but really kind of finding that line. So for you guys, it's serving that. Man, I just want to start a business, any business. I'm just curious. I'm just tired of working for somebody. My boss is an asshole. I just love fantasizing and thinking about it. You know? And then there's the other people who are like in there and want to dive deep and get a lot of real value out of the more interesting pieces. And I think you got to just respect that spectrum. Right?
Yes, you totally do. And you serve it all. It's a lot easier to serve it all digitally because people can come in different ways. I mean, nobody just goes to a website anymore. Literally nobody nobody sits down at their computer, types in entrepreneur.com, and then goes and surfs. I wish they did, but they don't. They also don't type in NewYorkTimes.com and just go. They come in through social, or they come in through search, like on Google.
Yeah.
So it's easier to serve those broad needs digitally. When you're making a print magazine, it's a lot harder because you want to create this mix that's valuable to everybody who receives it. And those people are coming from lots of different points of view and lots of different levels of experience. And so when I took this magazine over, which was at this point just over a year ago, I thought, how do we make this magazine feel, first of all, as relevant to the culture as the word entrepreneur is? Because 10 years ago, 5 years ago, nobody knew how to spell entrepreneur, certainly.
Right.
But they also, I don't think, really connected with it as a identity in the way that they do now. There's a culture of entrepreneurism. People identify with that word. And so I thought, we need the
almost
magazine
idolize that word.
Yeah.
It's really weird how that's come. And then there's the other word, serial entrepreneur, which is like, oh wow. And to me, I'm like, that just seems that word has always bothered me. Because that just feels like a trickster to me, like someone who like knows the formula and just puts out little like, oh, here's a little trick, here's a little trick.
Right.
Like I'm more about like, create something, but create something you love, like, and really like put your soul into it, not just like make this little formula work all the time.
Right.
But I respect that as well. Like we need these little things, but it's funny how that's put on such a pedestal. Like, if you put it in a bio, serial entrepreneur, like that's like a good thing.
Yeah. It's also funny. I hadn't thought about it until you pointed it out, but the way that we think about the word entrepreneur is, at least I do. I think people ask me to define entrepreneur all the time. It's a strange thing that entrepreneurs are obsessed with, is defining the word. And I always define it as an entrepreneur is someone who makes shit happen for themselves.
Yeah.
That's the definition. You are that. It's strange to affix serial to that, right? It's like,
right.
It's like calling myself a serial breather. I'm a breather. I do it all the time, day and night, right? And never stop doing it. Why do I need to affix serial to it? Like, you either are that kind of person or you're not. It's almost like what you really mean to say is serial company launcher, or serial new brand builder or something.
But those terms get conflated.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's a really good definition of entrepreneur, actually, because that really expands that. Because in that instance, you would for sure consider yourself an entrepreneur in that regard.
Yeah.
Even though you're working for a magazine that you didn't start.
No.
But in that way, you're making shit happen for yourself. I mean, you told a story at the end of our panel about something that you say to yourself every day, and I won't steal your thunder. What do you say to yourself, and when did you start saying it?
So I'll do that in reverse order. So when did I start saying it? I started as a community newspaper reporter. My first job was at the Gardner News, circulation 6,000, covering nothing. There was nothing. It's so hard. I feel for everyone in local news, it's a challenging thing to do because there's not always a lot happening. You've got to pump out stories. And quite frankly, if you're the kind of person, as I was, who had larger ambitions, it is a daily bruising of the ego to show up and have to. I mean, I literally did a series on the local diners because I got to find something, right? And
just eating Reubens.
There was a lot of them. It was a lot of them. It was the omelet tour of Gardner, Massachusetts. And I thought to myself, I need to get out of here, but I have a steep road ahead. I have no connections. I've done no fancy internships. I don't have anywhere to go with this. I have no ladder to climb. I got to build the ladder first. And so at some point, when I started making serious moves, I quit 2 newspaper jobs to freelance. One of them was to move to Boston because I had been freelancing for them for a bit, and I saw a potential opening at the magazine, and I wanted it. And so I quit my newspaper job, and I moved to Boston, and I took on this high rent and told the editor-in-chief of Boston Magazine I was ready to come work for him. It was the risk that made my career because they hired me. So at some point during that...
you got a place before you got your job?
Correct.
Yeah. You pushed basically all in.
I went all in.
And then it was a cold call to Boston Magazine?
No, sorry. So I was working I quit my first newspaper job. I sat in my bedroom for 9 months in Holden, Massachusetts, living next to a graveyard, looking out upon my career. And then cold
the symbolism
pitched.
is rich.
I know
it's rich.
But you know what? Rent was only $500, so not so bad. And I just cold pitched. Everybody. And I got some pieces after 9 months into the Washington Post, Salon, the Boston Globe, Associated Press, and then I got a job at a slightly larger community newspaper called the Worcester Telegram and Gazette. And
who hasn't heard of that?
Yeah, it's key. Well, it used to be owned by the New York Times,
all right.
actually.
All right.
So back off.
Oh, shit. All right.
We call it the TNG. So I worked that job for like 2-something years. And while I was doing that, I was also freelancing on the side constantly. So I would wake up early in the morning and I would pitch stories and I would freelance out of my bedroom. Then I'd go to my shift at like 2:30 p.m. and I'd be there till 10:30 and then I'd drive back home and then I'd write some more often. And those are my days. And I got some steady work.
Wander the graveyard.
I know. We actually did sometimes wander the graveyard. Yeah. It was like, there's nothing else to do in Holden, Massachusetts. What else are you going to do?
Just editing Tombstone mistakes. Yeah, still haven't fixed that one, everybody. still misspelled that. In loving mummery.
Yeah, man, it's been misspelled since 1857. Like, somebody's got to get around to that thing. It was like the recreation space. Sometimes me and my friends would like go around and like throw a football around in this graveyard. There's nothing to do. So eventually I got this steady work at Boston Magazine just by pitching them.
Wait, first of all, how many people do you think have died recreationally in a graveyard?
Ooh, that's a good question.
Like tripped and fallen and hit the head on
And then
do
you think that you get buried in that graveyard?
I don't know.
Or do you get transported to a different graveyard?
I probably transported just to make it complicated.
It certainly must have happened.
For sure.
Yeah. There was actually, you know what? There was a great gravestone. I haven't thought about this in so many years. There was a great gravestone in that graveyard. It described getting the guy. It was a Scottish immigrant in the early 1800s who got shot in a fight, and they said that, and they mentioned the killer's name on the gravestone.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Because it's like,
shot by so and so.
This is not being forgotten. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. This is not being forgotten. Yeah, right. We'll always remember. Fuck you. He should have just put "fuck you." So I had this time. Man, this is more than I've thought about that graveyard in a long time. Graveyard Memories with Jason Feifer. I was writing for Boston Magazine regularly, and it went on for maybe about a year. And then a senior editor was leaving, and an associate editor, who's a lower level position, was probably going to move up. And I knew this because at this point I had gotten to know some of the editors there. And I was like, I want that job. I want the associate editor job. I want to get out of newspapers. I want to get into magazines because that's the springboard to get into national magazines in New York, which was my goal. And I made it clear to the editor-in-chief that I wanted that job. We had a couple conversations, and he was kind of hemming and hawing. So
lukewarm.
So I quit my warmer than the people in the graveyard, and I quit my job in Central Massachusetts in the newspaper, and I moved to Boston, and I got an apartment that cost a hell of a lot of money. I mean, I think I went from like an apartment that cost $500 a month to $2,400 a month or something. And I told the editor that I was ready to be hired. And that could have absolutely backfired on me. And he threw me a couple more freelance pieces, and then he hired me.
It's kind of that burn the boat strategy, like what Robert Greene in his 33 Strategies of War says, the death ground approach, where like a general will put his army to the back of, backed up to a mountain when they're outnumbered and backed up to a river they can't cross, so that you just have to fight like hell.
That's right.
And it's interesting. And that really works. And it's actually a good strategy. Like actually in another one of his books, 48 Laws of Power, he talks about Dostoevsky, who did the same thing with his finances, though. Like he couldn't write unless he was like desperate. So, he was desperate most of his life. And then he was kind of in this counterculture. I don't know if you know the story of Dostoevsky, but he was in kind of counterculture, rebel, kind of in these community lounges against the czar or whatever. He got caught. They pulled him up and had him in the gallows. And there was this like moment where, he thought he was going to die. And they got finally like a reprieve from the czar. And then they got sent to Siberia to work camp. And that like changed his idea about what he wanted to do with life. And then he came out and he wrote his first novel. The novel was a success. The big, I forget which title it was, but one of his big successes. And then he got wealthy and then he couldn't write. And then one day he was gambling and gambled away all of his money and he was broke.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden he found he could write again because he was fucking desperate. And then so he would repeat that, where he realized he couldn't write from a position of luxury. He had to write and move forward from a position of abject desperation.
Wow.
And so he would just push all of his money away and then be like, all right, another book's coming, because it's got to fucking come.
I mean, I would not recommend that as a strategy for everyone, but it's good to know what motivates you.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it worked for you, right? I mean, you put yourself in a position over your head where you had to fucking succeed.
That's right. But
there was no choice.
That wasn't what I was thinking. What I was thinking was, nobody's going to come to me. I got to go to them. Like nobody is going to come to this kid working at this community newspaper and say, "Hey, want a job in the big city?" Right? Like nobody's doing that.
Yeah.
I have to go to them. I have to go to you. That's why I quit those newspaper jobs. Was because I sitting there and like writing another story about the diner in Gardner, Massachusetts was not going to get me to a magazine in New York. What was quitting, sitting in my bedroom, and then reaching out to all these magazines and newspapers and saying, "Hey, I have ideas for you, and I can work at your level. Let me show you that I can." And that was so that's why I moved to Boston, because I was like, I'm coming to you. You are not going to come to me. I know you're not. I'm going to come to you. And that was about the time to pay off on this thing that you teed up 10 minutes ago. That was about the time, I think, that I started saying this thing to myself every day, which was, I'm not fucking around. I'm not fucking around. Monday, I'm not fucking around. Tuesday, I'm not fucking around. Like I just kept saying it. Like it became this thing. I'd like walk down the street and like almost feel like I'm like in an action movie. I'm not fucking around, right? Because it just kind of helped frame for me what
your mantra.
what I was doing. Yeah. Which was that I'm here to work, and I'm here to kick ass, and I'm here to see what I'm made of, and how far I can take myself on my own talent and abilities. And you can be extremely talented or just motivated or whatever, but you can derail yourself quickly if you don't remember what your purpose is. And for me, my purpose, I've refined what it is over time, but certainly back then it was that I think that I can work at a high level, and nobody's given me the opportunity yet. So I'm not fucking around. I'm going to go do it.
Yeah, it's kind of I talk about this in my book, in the kind of final chapter, about how to put all of these practices that I've laid out into action. And one of the ways is to create an ethos. It's like the Spartans had an ethos: never give up, never surrender. Like that was part of their fucking mindset, and it was something that you didn't have to think about. It short circuited all the thoughts, like, well, maybe it would be a better strategy to surrender at this point, and then that could then maybe get you half in and half out when you're fighting a battle. For them, they never had that debate. Never give up, never surrender. It was really easy,
right?
Like really simple. All the mental
What
processes.
are the rules? Oh, I remember the rules.
yeah. And then a mantra is like a very shortened, like hyphenated version of that, because ethos can have many different things. But that mantra of I'm not fucking around.
Yeah.
So anytime you have thoughts about, oh, maybe I should, maybe I shouldn't, you have your mantra to be like, all right, I'm not fucking around.
And you know what's really good about I'm not fucking around? It scales well.
Yeah, yeah, totally.
Like, it applies to when I was just in my entry-level position at Boston Magazine to what I'm doing now, where I just keep piling projects on top of myself because I'm not fucking around never stops, right? I mean, if I'm not fucking around now, that means that I still have a lot more to do. Like, I'm not resting on this.
Mm-hmm.
I love this. I love what I do, but it's not the end.
It's one of the best things actually I've ever heard because it also encompasses prioritization, right?
Yeah.
It's not only motivation, because like there's a lot of motivating, mantras. Like Shannon Briggs on Joe Rogan's podcast, he talks about how he says, "Let's go, champ. Let's go, champ." It's very motivating.
Yeah.
And champ has some things, that are good to frame your mind, to think of yourself like a champion. So there's some other stuff there. But, there's this kind of driving, like just the whip. But then there's also the discretion of fucking around too.
Mm-hmm.
So like I'm not fucking around means that you're working hard, but you're also saying no to the stupid shit that
that's right.
that you shouldn't be doing too. So it like actually encompasses like one of the best ones I've ever heard. Honestly, I have to commend that to you. That's why it like stuck in my head because that's a perfect thing for everybody to say to themselves if they really want to make some moves.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not fucking around.
Yeah. I'm not fucking around. And it's funny when I say it to crowds, they laugh because it's funny. It sounds funny. But I think you also laugh going back to why God laughs. You also laugh because it's true.
Yeah.
It's true, and it's something. It works. It's easy. I'm not fucking around, right? I mean, you can sort of sort yourself pretty quickly.
You can sort your life by the times where you're not fucking around, where you're fucking around.
Right? Yeah,
it's like almost binary.
And you can ask yourself, like, am I fucking around, or am I not fucking around?
Yeah.
Like, which kind of person do I want to be? Because often people will come to my magazine, they come to your podcast, they come to that event that we spoke at, and they're often looking for motivation.
You can even be not fucking around with your not fucking around.
Oh shit.
And then not fucking around with your fucking around. Like everything you do, it just applies. It's meta. Right. It cuts all the way. It's so deep.
Yeah, that's true. It's turtles all the way down.
That's from somebody who asked somebody.
That's a William James quote.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just explain that because I've heard that before and it cracked me up.
So I'm pulling from a philosophy class that I took at least 15 years ago. So this is going to be pretty rough. I'm going to get angry emails from philosophy majors about this.
I'm a philosophy major. I won't be angry.
Okay, great. I appreciate that. So my memory of it, boy, I hope I have William James correct, is that William James was, I think, giving a sort of a thought experiment. Mm-hmm. What if all the world is on the back of a turtle, and a student asks, "Well, what's the turtle standing on?" And James says, "On another turtle." And well, what's that turtle standing on? Another turtle. It's turtles all the way down. Which I love.
I heard it the other way. I think where he was asking the student, like it was something else that could be on the back of a turtle, and like, what is it? And then the student said turtles all the way down. But it's either way.
Right. It's great.
Funny.
It's a great quote. I'm not sure what to make of it.
Well, I think it puts you in that predicament. Like, it's like when you're talking to a flat earther, right? It's like, well, what's at the edge of the earth? Well, ice wall.
Yeah.
Well, what's beyond the ice wall? Well, more ice wall. Well, what's beyond the more ice wall? Ice wall all the way to the end.
Yeah.
What do you mean ice wall all the way to the end? Like, what are you talking about?
Right. It just keeps going. You know what? This reminds me of? Probably because we've been talking about like that time in Boston. So I was, when I was at Boston Magazine, and I got a job offer from Men's Health, which would have moved me to New York for a national magazine. It was my goal, right? And not necessarily to work at Men's Health, though I had an amazing time there, but to take that job. And I had this. I was dating someone at the time. We were living together, and
from your time at Maxim, were you dating somebody?
No, this is before.
Oh,
okay. I got married.
I want to get into that.
Yeah. Oh, okay. We can talk about that. No, this is Maxim is later. I was married by the time I was at Maxim.
Okay. That's a bummer.
I know, but you know what? I was at a different Maxim. It was a different Maxim.
Like UK Maxim? Those are still
No,
like
good. Maxim,
like Brazil Maxim.
No.
I mean, that might even be better.
Probably would. No, it was so Maxim. What year was this? 2015, 16. It came under different ownership, and the goal they tried to update Maxim for a more sophisticated 30-something man. They changed Maxim.
Yeah.
The Maxim that you pick up on the newsstand now is not the Maxim you remember from growing up.
That's a shame.
It's a completely different
I have
magazine.
such fond memories.
Yeah, I know.
When I was younger.
Well, so it's
like Jennifer Love Hewitt covers and like, oh,
yeah.
Damn, I didn't know she was that hot.
I know, but here's the problem. The kids of today that were you of yesterday, they're not picking up a print magazine.
No.
They have many other ways to find photos of Jennifer Love Hewitt or whoever else they're interested in. So they're not picking up that print magazine. What Maxim has as a brand is this love from guys who grew up with it who aren't necessarily attached to it right now. They love it. They feel warmly towards it.
Yep.
But they don't.
It's one way to describe it.
Yeah. In a particular region, do they feel warmly towards it?
Yeah.
But they don't. They're not picking it up. They're not reading it, right? So the thinking was, why don't we advance this magazine to where those guys are now and speak to them as a men's magazine that is relevant to them in their 30s and 40s? And they brought on this editor, Kate Lanphier. She was from T, the Sunday Times style magazine,
mm-hmm.
and she became the editor in chief. And the idea was to make like a more mature Maxim, and that was the Maxim rebranding experiment that I joined.
Did it work?
I left after 9 months. And I went to entrepreneur.
Yeah.
So it was different. It was totally different. I never went to any Maxim parties. There were no like models walking around in the office. It was really different.
Yeah.
Yeah. It was like, it was like seeing we all see this at various places in the media world, but it was a front row seat to searching for relevancy.
Yeah. It's an interesting opportunity because they see something that's not exactly hitting, and then they try to pivot. Playboy tried to do the same thing, right? And I don't think that worked out.
No,
so well
I think
for
they
Playboy.
went back,
and then now they went back. So clearly, it didn't work that
right.
well. I mean, I'm not privy to the numbers or whatever, but it was a failed experiment. I think sometimes people will freak out and try to change their core competency and their
mm-hmm.
core mission rather than pivoting off of, all right, what are we really good at, and how can we serve that in a different way?
Yeah,
It's interesting, that choice that certain companies or brands or magazines or media or whatever will make. I think you got to stick with why people loved you and then figure out how to deliver that in a way that people still want to consume.
Right. But it's at the same time, if you have people who love you, but the business model isn't working, you got to try something.
Yeah.
I think, but
it was it was the same business model, just different content.
But
right?
it wasn't. When Maxim was bought and reinvented, it wasn't like the Maxim that was purchased was not working. It was losing money. Right. So it was putting out a magazine that looked and felt pretty similar to the magazine that was made in the 90s. It was a lot thinner, and it wasn't as good, frankly, just because they didn't have the staff that they used to. It was
the writing used to be really good, actually. I found myself chuckling and like,
it was a funny magazine.
Yeah, it was funny.
And I know some of the guys who were, and I work with some of the guys who were at that previous version of Maxim that got bought and then scrapped. They're great guys. They're really funny. But, when you have a really small team and you're like scrambling just to make a thing, you can't put the time and effort into making everything as like crisp and amazing.
Yeah, because you're in scarcity at that point.
Yeah.
You're just trying to survive.
That's exactly right.
Yeah, I can't play poker with scared money.
No, you can't. And that's what a lot of media does. Mm-hmm. And that's what that magazine was doing. So I think that it was a noble effort. You got to try something, right? Because the option otherwise is to stick with what used to work and what the original vision was, just because that was the original vision, and then just go down with it.
No, well, I think the move is, you're right. You got to try something. For me, the move would have been to look at who's actually killing it. Like we mentioned him earlier,
mm-hmm.
Chive is fucking crushing it.
Yes.
Like I know those guys. And they don't have a magazine. What
mm-hmm.
do they have? They have a strong merch program.
Right.
They have digital content that's
mm-hmm.
just blowing up. They're serving everything exactly where people wanted it. They have, their little in-bar TV, TV stations. They have all of the Instagram and Facebook and all of this digital media, and they're they're slaughtering. They're like really killing it. And Maxim had that opportunity. You could have had Maxim TV and bar restrooms, and you could have had Maxim TV, content and putting it out on Facebook, and this Maxim, and then tastemaker parties and things that people still would have gone to, and just even taking their baby. Like, you got to kill your darlings. That's what Stephen King, obviously said about editing your book. Like, you're going to kill your darlings. Right. And true. I think at that point, that might have been the move to say, this was our magazine. We love it. But the magazine is dead. Right. Kill the magazine, divert the resources all into digital, double down on that, double down on the brand equity that we have there, and just kill the magazine entirely. And so what you said, I think, was really important there, where you said they had the opportunity. It was something that, it was a move that had to be made early at a time where I think it would have seemed insane to make that move. Yeah. Not dissimilar to what we were talking about earlier with Apple pulling the headphone jack, right? Mm-hmm. You have to make a move at a time where you see the future before other people do, and you act on it. And when you do that, other people are going to say, whoa, like, that's a crazy risk. You're taking a crazy risk, but you know that it's not a crazy risk. Like, it's the best risks in entrepreneurism is the ones that other people think are crazier than you do, because you are in it. You've done the work. You see where it's going. So yeah, I mean, that brand, I think, had that brand gone out on top, like Seinfeld, right, and said, all right, we're going to be something else now. I think people would look to them as a case example of, wow, that was genius. Yeah. At the time when their magazine was still hot, they scrapped it because they saw the future. They saw everything was going digital, and they changed all of the delivery of their content and completely rebranded. It could be the person who made that move would be the person on stage at Synergy giving a keynote talking about that visionary move. Like, Blockbuster probably had the chance to be Netflix, at some point. Like, they had the brand equity at that point that if they would have been smart enough and like bold enough to just see where things were going and shift. Oh my God. Could you imagine if Blockbuster had said, everyone, we're shutting down the stores, all the stores, and we're just going to mail you some DVDs, right? Like before Netflix even came around. But what did Blockbuster do instead? They fought it, right? Because everybody just fights change like fucking idiots. Like, they fight change. Why fight the tide, right? So they fought it, and then they tried to copy it. Yeah. And then it's too late. And then they were done. It's too late. Anytime you're trying to squash and fight and battle the way that the market is going, you're going to lose. Yeah. It's like, I was just talking with Jesse about the music industry fighting all of the shared music. Like, good luck. Good luck. I know, right? But it's not going to work. But now what you're seeing is that the numbers are starting to prove out the new model. Yeah. Spotify and everything is streaming is huge. Streaming They're making lots of money. Yeah. It's working. There's a transition. Transitions are scary, but you cannot pause time. You can't. Mm-hmm. It's funny. I have this podcast called Pessimist's Archive. It's a history of unfounded fears of innovation, where every episode we look at the moment a new piece of technology or innovation was introduced and try to understand why it freaked everybody out. And these are all stories. The things that we take for granted in our lives, the coffee we're drinking right now, the recorded music that our listeners listen to, everything was fought against. Everything. And it's really interesting to see how people tried to stop it. Sometimes the way that they tried to use legislation to stop it. I did an episode on the bicycle, and the bicycle was fought tooth and nail. Like, people fucking hated the bicycle for so many reasons. But one of my favorite things in that episode is I found this chunk of text from, I guess it would have been late 1800s, early 1900s. It was a report about the economic impact of the bicycle, and talking to all of these people who are part of an aging economy who are now very upset. So, for example, guys who sold like those fancy hats were very upset because bicyclists don't buy the fancy hats; they buy like a cheaper hat, right? And bars were upset because bicyclists wanted to drink water instead of sit in the bar and have beers all day, right? And they're blaming the bicycle for this. Like, it is probably an affront to horse industry, I guess. Oh yeah, horse industry was pissed. Oh yeah, well, the horse industry was pissed about a lot of things. Did you know that when
when the car, we called the horseless carriage at first, when the car first hit the streets and it would pass by, people would yell, "Get a horse!" at the car.
Really?
Yeah, actual thing. Like that was a common phrase at the time, "Get a horse." So anyway, there was a guy, I think it was the hat guy, who had proposed legislation that every cyclist has to buy a certain number of like fancy caps, right? To make up for the lost income for the hat makers, to try to keep that industry where it was, frozen in time, in ember, instead of
protected haberdashers.
Right. Instead of, you know what that guy could have done? Made fucking bicycle hats. That's what he could have done, right? Yeah. Oh, you have a new customer and they like hats. They just like different kinds of hats. Make those fucking hats.
Yeah.
Like, but people don't think that. They instead they dig in. They stay with the old model. They stay with whatever it was that they were comfortable with, because I think people like what they know, and they don't want to learn something else. And that is when you get passed by.
Yeah, I mean, you look at industries now that's happening too, like cabbies fighting, ride sharing platforms.
Yes.
Like I remember for a while in Vegas, every cabbie had this like fucking big circle with an X through Uber, like anti-Uber, and they'd be getting in yelling matches with Ubers this year, like driving by. Cabs are a miserable experience.
Yes.
Like Ubers are a far superior experience in general to that, and they'll fight it. And even in Austin, they actually succeeded for a while and banned Uber. And guess what happened? Drunk driving went up. Traffic fatalities went up. Like the decision to ban Uber that they actually got through the legislation temporarily was catastrophic. And, not in like mass numbers, but like there was people who got hurt from that decision.
Yeah.
Because they're trying to protect this old industry instead of advancing the times, instead of cabs having a way better mobile system that actually worked, and then, converting and going with, people want people to pick me up on time, be accountable, know who it is, have a fucking rating, and be able to know that I can put in exactly where I'm going and not fuck with it at the beginning and not worry about payment at the end.
Yeah.
Like that's a better system. Let's just adapt to that instead of holding on to these old monopolies.
Yeah.
It's like oligarchs holding on to their old ways. But now in our time, you're just the tighter you hold, the more fingernails you're going to lose.
That's right.
Because it's going to get ripped from you.
That's right. You can hold on for a while if you've got enough money and enough power and enough access to Washington. Say you can hold on for a while, but you're going to lose out in the end. And that's the lesson of history. Right. I mean, if you go back and you look at any of these moments where something new is introduced and you see people fight against it, they always lose.
Yeah.
They always lose.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, literally, if they won, we wouldn't be sitting here right now because we wouldn't have these fucking microphones in front of us. Right?
Yeah.
Because people fought against microphones. They fought against recorded music. They thought that everything had to be live.
Yeah. I mean, you look at it now, people are fighting against legal marijuana.
Yeah.
Good luck.
Good luck.
Too late.
Right.
It's got momentum now. People realize that this is stupid, and states are making more money. People are being safer. People are treating conditions, and they're like, you look at Jeff Sessions, and he's talking about, we're going to win this war on the opioid crisis because we're going to have these pill buybacks where everybody's going to voluntarily give up their pills, and we're going to take them off the streets. I'm like, no, that's not going to work. That's not the way it works. It works by finding another alternate solution, like saying, hey, let's relax the CBD laws and refine that and give people another opportunity, to find another way to fight pain, another way to, no, of course not. They're trying to hold on to the old restriction, prohibition, ban, fight the times, war on this, war on that, rather than, no, let's innovate a new, better way.
That's right. Because what they want to do is go backwards.
Yeah.
They just want to go to a time when the problem didn't exist, which means that they want to reverse time. But you got to deal with the current. And the current means that you got to find something for the future.
So if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this, as I'm sure someone who wants to be an entrepreneur, wants to take control of their own destiny, because I think that was the absolute right definition. Like, I want to take control of my own destiny. I'm tired of being a cog in a machine that I don't really believe in. What do you think is, what are like the very basic steps that you would say that someone should take? Like, what's the first move on the board?
Man, I mean, it's so situational, but I would say the first thing you need to do is experiment.
Yeah.
What are you good at? What can you contribute? What can you build? What kind of thing would you like to do? I mean, I think that the reason why Need a Business Idea Hero 52 is so popular, it's because people just need a starting point.
Yeah.
And I think that people often, you lose people at the start. You lose people at the starting line. They don't even move to the first step. And you need to move to that first step. And whatever that first step is for you, it could be that you have some kind of talent and you see if you can kind of build a side hustle off of it and just see how it goes. Not only just see how it goes. I think sometimes people think that they're only testing their idea, but frequently when you move forward in any capacity, you're testing yourself.
Yeah.
You're seeing, can I do this? Do I have the motivation to do this? Do I have the bandwidth to do whatever I need to do right now to feed my family, to, whatever situation you have, but to also add something else on the side that could create the future for you. Can you do that? Because you won't know unless you try. And I think that people will often be surprised that if you find something you love and you tell yourself, I'm not fucking around, and you see how you do with it, you'll discover that you have a untapped reservoir of energy and ideas that you can direct towards something that are currently going completely unused. It's that first step, and that first step is going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, sure. It'll apply to their own specific proclivities and their talents and the ability to bridge. I always like to talk to people about, you're probably not going to be the best at just one thing, right? But you can add your unique perspective and then blend those two things together. And it's one of the reasons why, Whitney's sitting here in the room, my fiance, and we talked about blending. She's always loved hosting. She's hosted, on sales channels and jewelry channels. And she also was interested in martial arts and also had a pageant. And we're like, how can we blend all of those things together? And, so she went into her martial arts career and then ultimately blended that by being the host for Glory Kickboxing now, right? Like something that was unique. Well, I've done pageants, I've done hosting, and I know fighting. Like now we can find the nexus point, and then there'll be a career at that nexus point, which is her dream job. So like finding the areas, maybe you like, you're really into fishing, but you're also into this other thing, and like, is there a nexus point between fishing and this other thing that you can create and then build a business? So that's where I like people to think about it. But then I think it's not just the getting started, it's getting started to the point where you have an opportunity to fail. Because that's where I think people pull back.
That's a really great point.
Like I have a talented artist friend who takes all of her art to about 75 to 80% complete. And she's had offers. I've seen her get offers for her finished art, but she won't finish it. It's like there's something like if she actually finishes it, then she's got to see if it sells. And then she's got to see if a gallery will put it up. And then she's got to face the rejection for it.
Right.
And that's a very literal form where it's an actual piece of art that has a completion. But in all these businesses or podcasts, people kind of get it started and then pull back before they really have to put themselves on the line.
Yeah.
But if you can go to the point where you fail, then you'll learn something. And then you can do that again. Like if you really are serious, you're really not fucking around, just keep going to the point of fail. Take that blow to your ego, learn, adapt, and fail again.
That's
but
right.
Like go all the way to either fail or success. Don't pull back so that it's nebulous, so that you've protected yourself so you don't worry if it didn't work, I didn't really finish the art, so who knows? Like go all the way to the point of success or fail, and either way it's a win. Because you'll know at that point.
I really love that. That's so true. Because when you get to that fail, you have to change.
Yeah.
And that's really hard because at that point you are now going to have to challenge the vision and the thing that motivated you in the first place, right? You have to get to that point where you started the paint and sip because you thought people wanted to paint Picasso, and now you got to change, right? Yeah. And I think that's really hard for people. But I love that example that you gave of finding the nexus point because. People have a lot of interests. I think you have more marketable skills than you realize. Everybody does, right? But also at the same time, I always encourage people to go think about skills as a goal in and of itself. Just go learn something, right? Just go try something just to learn it. I started that podcast just to learn podcasting, right? I didn't know if it was going to make me money. I didn't know what the hell it was going to do for me. You know what it did for me? It still hasn't made me money, not past this archive. But it taught me a different kind of writing style, which was really valuable. I always love learning different kind of writing styles. It makes me a better thinker, makes me a better writer. It improved my ability to speak, which I now use on other podcasts like this and also on stage. And then when I was at Entrepreneur and we decided to start a podcast network, guess who was the in-house expert on podcasting? I was, because I had started this thing by myself just for the fuck of it.
Yep.
You know? And I did not know where that was going to lead. I didn't have an ROI attached to jumping into podcasts. I just knew that by continuing to do it and refine it, I was going to learn something that would be valuable at some time. Mm-hmm. And once you arm yourself with more skills, you can find the intersections. You can find those nexuses, and there's just more of them because you know how to do more.
Yeah. Yeah, be great. Practice being great. Practice being acquiring these skills. And then, as you said, more nexus points will form, more opportunities will form. I'm the perfect example of that, of having so many different nexus points that ultimately the company that I'm running is the combination of all of those. And the book that I'm writing is the combination of everything. Like, there's people who are more experts on sleep, better experts on sex, better experts on nutrition, better experts on every one of these topics. Could be a 400-page book on its own. But the nexus point of how to put them all together, like the perfect example of that, like being able to draw multiple nexus points and create a business and a movement surrounding that. But everybody has that opportunity. You take all the skills that you've had, and in every one of those things, I've had my time where I'm not fucking around and I'm learning and trying and going as hard as I could to get that, and then it creates just more opportunities to create products, to create ideas, to create different things. But we all have those. And if we don't, then we need to start making some more of them. So maybe that very first initial step, if you're like, all right, what are my nexus points? What are 2 things that I'm really good at that I can combine? Well, I only got one thing. Well, like you said, fucking learn more skills, like practice juggling or darts or fucking, I don't know, whatever.
Yeah.
Start just picking up these different things. And then, maybe you have an idea in your head, but if not, just start being great at something.
Yeah. I was speaking in a NYU journalism class last night, and a student asked me, as students always do, was I worried about getting pigeonholed, or did I worry about needing only one focus, right? Because I've been all over the place. And I told her what I always tell students, which is that one, I've always thought of jobs as skill sets. I think, what can I learn that I don't know at this job that will make me more valuable at my next job, and then build my ladder up from there. So every job I've taken for a specific reason. I took the Men's Health job to learn how to do front of book editing. I took Fast Company, which is where I went next, to learn how to do a long form feature editing. And then bonus, they launched a video department, and I jumped into that to learn how to do video. Then I took the Maxim job, actually not because I cared about Maxim. I took it because I wanted the experience of working like across, like I was a deputy editor position. So it was working with lots of different people on lots of different things. And I wanted to be able to juggle. I wanted to learn that kind of management, now that I learned the skills underneath the management, and on you go. And at some point, me, when you think about what am I adding and where am I going, because it's valuable to know where you're going. I found that it's not valuable to have one specific goal in mind, because that ultimately narrows what opportunities I take. If I thought I only want to be editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine, I would have turned down all the opportunities that actually did get me to become editor-in-chief of Entrepreneur Magazine. So instead, I had to think, what thing is so core to me that lots of different things can revolve around it? Mm-hmm. And for me, that thing is this. I like to tell stories in my own voice. That's it. That is the definition of my career. That is every opportunity that I will take. That is the filter by which I will put things through, because that is so broad that I can take on lots of different opportunities. That allows me to launch a podcast, and it allows me to write a novel with my wife, which I just did. It allows me to do all sorts of crazy things that are not part of whatever traditional career path somebody might have put me on, or that I might have accidentally limited myself to earlier. You have to find that core thing that isn't so narrow that you miss out on all the amazing things that you need to learn to move forward.
Yeah. Good advice. Good advice, brother. It's been great sitting down here.
Hey,
with
man,
you, man.
I really appreciate
for
you
sure.
having me on here.
$1 subscription
Yeah,
offering
let's
our
do
magazine?
it. Right.
I heard that was a possibility.
It is a possibility.
You get this magazine for $1.
That's right. That's right. You get a magazine for not free, but so close to free.
So close.
Right? It's the best price except for free. And 1 penny to 99 pennies. So if you go to entrepreneur.com/insider, promo code INSIDER, that will get you that'll get you the whole thing. There it is. Insider. Entrepreneur.com/insider, promo code INSIDER. That is my super secret, not that secret because I'm talking about it on podcast, but I want entrepreneurs to have access to the magazine, and I want to lower the barrier as much as possible.
And
so
it's a great opportunity to learn from people who've done who've done it and been there, and
right.
all the lessons. And I think, one thing that's great is people are really open, even on our panel. Like a lot of the best are really open to talk about their failures, talk about the ways they fucked up, talk about the things that they struggle with. It's
the reason I love talking to entrepreneurs is because they are so embracing of their failures. And so one other resource I've got, which actually is free. You don't have to pay for this. So I also have a podcast for entrepreneur called Problem Solvers. Just search Problem Solvers, you'll get it. Every episode is an entrepreneur talking about how they solved an unexpected problem in their business. And again, I love that entrepreneurs they're so open about it because they know that it's not embarrassing to have faced a problem, to have not known something was coming. And frankly, if you are talking about the problem that you solved, you're talking about being a smart person.
Yeah.
Like you solved it. You solved it. And but it's also just so relatable. Like we need to, I think, as a culture, be really embracing of where we fuck up, because it's nothing to be ashamed of. And we are all works in progress. We're all, Reid Hoffman calls it living in permanent beta. If you don't think of yourself as something that needs to be perfect, then you are embracing of the constant evolution of yourself and what you do, and that's what entrepreneurism is all about.
Yeah, that's that perfection myth is what keeps people from putting out their art, or keeps people from putting out, like, that if that failure will somehow attach a stigma or a stink and make you realize that you aren't perfect. Well, guess what? You're not fucking perfect anyways. So just put it out there.
Just put it out there. Nobody expected you to be perfect.
No, and everybody you talk to, is grateful for the failures. Grateful. I learned a lot from that thing. Nobody's like, I failed. It ruined my life. That's right. Like, you don't hear that from anybody.
And you know what also? I'm sure you get this. I get this a lot. Whenever I write about a failure of mine, people love it.
Yeah.
They really love it. They praise it on Twitter or whatever.
Sure.
It's like they want to hear you talk about this stuff, right? They don't want you to be this person who just projects perfectionism. They want the real thing. That is what connects people to you, is you showing the real side of you, because everyone else is feeling the real side of themselves.
100%. My man. Oh, also, Pessimist Archive.
Yes.
Listen to that. That's
Pessimist
super
Archive.
interesting to me. Let's rattle off like 10 things that people tried to fight. The pessimists thought were going to ruin the world.
Okay. Yeah.
10 things. Lightning round.
Lightning round. Okay. So some of the episodes: the Walkman, recorded music, the umbrella. We did an episode on the umbrella. Coffee is the next episode. Chess, the novel, the comic book, pinball, the horseless carriage, and we need one more. Indoor lighting.
One day we'll look at all the things we're fighting now, and it'll be in that category.
Well, that's the thing.
And there'll be people podcasting like, they tried to make weed illegal. They succeeded for a while.
The reason I do this show, it's called Pessimist Archive. It is an optimistic show, because here's the thing: we do not break easily. The history is us fearing that new innovations will destroy us. And what we find over and over again is that they just make us better. And so when you look at things today that we fear, like, oh my God, texting is changing everybody's minds and now nobody can pay attention. Fuck that. We're all going to be okay. We're all going to be okay.
Amen. Thank you, brother.
Hey,
appreciate
thank you.
Check them out everywhere. Peace.